Welcome back to Data Center Battlegrounds. Got a couple of good videos for us to react to this morning after going through some LinkedIn stuff. So without further ado, let's get started. This is severe flooding in Mason County relating to data center construction, residents to be reimbursed.
Here's the water running down in our basement.
Rushing water, damaging homes in an area where neighbors say they've never seen flooding.
This is a big flood we got at our backyard, and we've never had one of these before.
This is the home of Helen and Bob Humphreys. They've lived here for years and say they've never had flooding problems until a data center started getting built in their backyard. So you all have been here for a very long time.
Yes.
Yes,
Have you ever seen flooding like this before?
No,
absolutely not.
never.
Homes along University Lane in Mason County now dealing with the fallout of flooding after heavy rains in the area.
The water's in our garage and under the house, and it's going to be hard to clean.
The Monarch Commute campus is being built right behind these homes, and they say in part, our stormwater controls were inspected last week and found to be in compliance with the approved plan. But the intensity of this rainfall exceeded the design capacity of the temporary erosion controls in place during construction, and one section of silt fencing gave way under the force of the water.
See, this is where all the water's coming in. And it's never happened like that, and I've been here 30 years.
This area behind the homes will house an AI data center. The company goes on to say the section of the fence has already been fixed and have plans in place to help with the flooding in the future. Neighbors expressing concerns about what happened to their homes.
And now that this has happened to my house and my property, I'm worried about my children's safety and my safety because now our house has been exposed to all this water underneath of it. I'm worried about mold. I'm worried about our health and safety.
Ariana Mintz, WSAZ, Mason County.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. It depends on whether or not you believe in climate change and where you sit like on the political aisle, but coming from the environmental and climate policy world, climate change like makes more extreme events like this, like periodic, more frequent, and also just more intense. And so what we're seeing now is rainfall events that happen when, masses of hot air converge together. That creates like significant pressure, and then all of a sudden, like you have a massive like storm that just hits fast, hard, and then just disappears like afterwards. It's like the summer and spring thunderstorms, but just like 10x that. So you're going to have more increased flooding risk, across the U.S. depending on where you live. And if there is a data center being built in your backyard, there's probably going to be like over here, it's like you have the data center in their backyard, and then their entire like area just gets flooded just because like there's nowhere for the water to go. So I wonder if insurance companies are going to maybe start going into this vertical where, okay, you have a data center being built in someone's backyard, their house gets flooded because the data center construction zone doesn't fully allow like the rainfall or whatever to like go through the ground, and instead it gets diverted, right? So the fence goes down, the flood gets like flooded, property gets damaged, black mold, all that stuff. I wonder if there's going to be a new form of insurance for that. But from what we've seen with wildfires, I mean, Allstate, I think, pulled out of California and like other parts of the US just because like they can't, I mean, they say that they can't afford the cost of like insuring all these like different homes. But what alternative do people have? Not having insurance at all, and then their property gets destroyed. So I don't know. I hope they get reimbursed in some capacity. That sucks. I mean, that level of water is insane. And then where do you go, So, okay. Second one, we saw what AI data centers don't want you to see. This apparently has to do with thermal imaging cameras, which is like very interesting. So if I had to guess, it's going to be about xAI's Colossus 1 and 2 data center facilities in Memphis, Tennessee. I've seen like other YouTube videos recently about like folks using thermal cameras to see like the air pollution from the generators that they're running to power the data center itself, and trying to prove the human health the public health impact pretty much of like this. So.
Wow, it's just pouring out of that stack. When you see this much color on the screen like this, what does that tell you?
It's showing a heat signature, so we know that pollution is happening at this site.
This is Stargate, one of the largest AI.
Never mind. So it's Stargate, not Colossus 1 and 2. So for those of you who don't know, this is like the poster child of hyperscale AI data centers. Like when I say this is huge, like that's an understatement. Like this is like massive. It's one of the biggest like AI data center projects like in the US.
Data centers in the world. It's currently under construction in rural Texas. Stargate will eventually include 4 million square feet of buildings across 1,100 acres. That's larger than Central Park.
When we get a look at it, we'll get a real sense of the scale that is involved here. I mean, this is a massive, massive site.
It's estimated that by the year 2030, companies will have invested nearly $7 trillion in data center infrastructure in a race to dominate the AI market.
You know the market has flipped when there was a graphic from Bloomberg that I saw recently that like spotted or that put office center construction, like, you know, cubicles and offices and stuff, and then data centers. And so like, you know, times are changing when office building construction is superseded by data center construction, because for the longest time, you know, everyone was in person. Office buildings were, you know, being thrown up left and right. Remote work came in 2020 with the pandemic, but then afterwards, like investment was still pretty high. So according to this one graphic, so you had like, you know, the office building construction, and then data centers were like, you know, kind of lagging below. And then all of a sudden, post 2022, boom, it just like shoots up. So $7 trillion. Yeah. That's wow.
But this race to build AI superiority is happening so fast, many are concerned that companies might be cutting corners or taking advantage of regulatory loopholes, especially when it comes to the electricity and water required to run these massive data centers.
Want any questions answered? We just want it stopped.
People all over the US are raising the alarm about the impacts that these data centers could have on their health, their homes, and their livelihoods. Evan Simon has been investigating data centers around the US. He's already found that some AI data centers are brazenly defying environmental laws, and regulators are doing little to stop it.
So on that note, I know I'm pausing the video every 30 seconds, but this is like impossible like not to talk about. Like this week, Administrator Lee Zeldin from the EPA said that the EPA is not going to put out like a national standard for data centers. And so like that point about like data center companies kind of being brazen about like the environmental impacts and just like causing public health impacts potentially, as we'll find out later in the video. I mean, the federal environmental law that is supposed to be protecting human health and the environment is not setting like a national standard for data centers. Like it doesn't even have to be like mandatory. Oh, I wish it was mandatory, but then that's my opinion. But you can start off voluntary and like at least provide like a framework to show people like, okay, for energy, you have to use 100% like clean fuel mix, right? So just solar, renewable, geothermal, nuclear, right? Water, you can't consume above like this threshold, depending on where you are. You can't set up in a drought-prone environment, things like that. I don't know. I just think about this stuff a lot, and it's like the lack of a federal national standard for data centers in the US is part of like what is causing this problem. Because again, there's like a lot of regulatory loopholes that they can take advantage of. So
There's really a transparency issue around the AI industry right now. It feels like a really important time for us to really pay close attention to these things.
We're teaming up today to take you up above for a different perspective on this science story, using a drone fitted with a thermal camera to investigate what's really happening at one of the world's largest data centers, and how it's impacting the people who live in its backyard.
There are a lot of people that have not seen what we hope to show through the drone footage, especially the thermal drone footage.
Is this even legal?
All right, so this looks like
like any other drone.
Regardless of how you feel about AI itself or the way that it's being rolled out, one thing is inescapable. Despite tech companies making promises about renewable energy and sustainable technology, much of this massive AI expansion is still being powered by fossil fuels. Your AI query likely pings a data center like this, full of millions of power-hungry processing chips running the chatbots, agents, and other tools that millions of people interact with every day. But to power those operations, data centers around the country are increasingly relying on their own custom-built gas power plants.
Remember, bring your own generation. That's essentially like what's going on. They're building natural gas facilities like on site to be able to power stuff like this, because the existing energy infrastructure can't provide, I think, the generation needed to build to power a hyperscale AI data center campus that's like larger than what did it say, Central Park for like New York or whatever. That's in, or no, bigger than Manhattan. I forget like what the comparison was, but the point is that they're building like, again, custom built natural gas power plants.
The Stargate data center already has 62 diesel generators and 10 gas-powered turbines on site, with plans for 41 more.
Wow.
This will make it one of the largest fossil fuel power plants of any kind in Texas, and it's just to power this data center.
Why is it so important that we
So Texas is forecasted to be the biggest data center market by 2030, and that's on purpose because there's, a lot of fast track of environmental permitting, abundant fossil fuel supplies that are in the state. What else was there? Tax incentives to build such a thing with the Stargate project is a good example of that. So I'm not surprised that there's that much more power capacity that needs to come online to power this.
keep an eye on this growing industry?
There's a lot of secrecy surrounding these sites. Public officials are signing NDAs, companies are using proprietary information shields, and state and federal regulators don't seem like they're able to keep up. So we feel like it's really important at our newsroom to monitor what seems like a fairly lightly regulated industry, especially as it grows at such a rapid clip.
New facilities like this are being built largely to meet demand for generative AI tools like chatbots. OpenAI reported that global use of chatbots more than doubled in the last year, going from 400 to 900 million users.
Growth is the #1 concern for all of these data centers. They are trying to beat everybody else in being the first to really harness the profitability around AI, and for them, that really means essentially getting as much power as fast as they can.
So that term is called speed to power, where you bring a data center online as fast as possible in order to ride off of this like profitability wave. At the end of the day, these companies are profit-making companies that have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. I'm not defending their actions, but when you zoom out and you see the entire like data center AI revolution, I mean, it's no wonder that like speed to power is like, it's not an obsession. It's like almost mandatory, I think, in their eyes, because like they need to make money off of this with the trillions that like they're pouring in, like 7 trillion, I think we just saw by 2030. I'm not surprised.
Big tech companies are projected to spend more than $800 billion on the infrastructure behind artificial intelligence in 2026. And in 2027, that number will exceed $1 trillion. That's on par with the entire U.S. defense budget. Stargate is one of the most ambitious and powerful AI data centers ever built. The proposed on-site power plant could deliver more than 1.7 gigawatts of power. That's enough energy to power more than 1 million homes for a year. And the plant will emit more than 7.8 million tons of greenhouse gases each year. That's the annual emissions of about 2 million cars. Satellite imagery reveals the enormous impact it has made to the landscape from 2024 to today.
Holy crud. Look at all of that. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere. I get it. And like, that's probably why they chose to build it in such a place. But my goodness, like when you see just like how the entire land had changed, I think people fail to realize also that like when you build a data center, especially if it's not in proximity to any towns or like major cities. You have to build like the actual infrastructure. So we're talking roads, transmission networks. Like, okay, look at this. We can almost even dissect this. This video is going to be like an hour, but whatever. So we have like roads here, right? We have a parking lot for cars. We have the data center capacity itself. And then I'm looking for, yeah, this, I'm just guessing, but like this might be like living quarters for the people that are like building the infrastructure potentially, but that just goes to show you. And then you have the town on the far right over here, Abilene or whatever. That's a small town if I'm not mistaken. And then some maybe agriculture over here. But yeah, so the point is that like you have to build roads, living accommodations, transmission systems, you have to port over mining equipment. Like this is like we're talking about building like a city, you know what I mean? But like it's a data center. It's insane.
And the construction still hasn't been completed.
We're driving around and we still haven't gotten a clear look at this place. And I think that's why the aerial view is going to be key to figuring out what's going on here.
Our thermal drone is just one part of our reporting process. We still heavily rely on more traditional forms of investigative journalism, mainly public records requests. So we often use a combination of public records requests and innovative things like thermal imaging to really get a sense of what exactly is happening at these facilities.
From the outside, this just looks like a gigantic building. Like, what's happening inside of there that is like causing all this demand, causing this race for energy?
The computer processors or GPUs that are inside of these massive data centers require enormous amounts of energy. It's really hard to get a sense of actually how much energy is pulsing through these facilities. And so that's why we've started to incorporate a thermal drone to really try to get a sense of what is actually happening at these facilities.
Omaira Garcia, or OG as she likes to be called, lives right next door to Stargate.
Can you imagine living next to that? Oh my God. I'm gonna bet that like so I've been reading like some reports about living next to a data center in different states, and like I'm reading different things about like folks can set like fire to the water that's like being poured out of their tap because like there's some sort of like weird natural gas like problem where it's like the water has like that, so they can like apparently like I saw like a Reddit thread about like someone set fire to their freaking like water tap or whatever. It was crazy. And then what else? Like there was the ACO Cortez hearing where the water was like, you know, a dark brown because they were draining the water aquifer so much to the point where like dirt and pollutants and stuff were like entering the water table because it was so low, and it historically has never been that way. Noise pollution, yeah, take your pick.
We launched the thermal drone from her property to get a look at what's really going on.
My husband and I both served in the military. What initially brought us to Abilene was his military service. After being here for a couple years, we really just kind of fell in love with it. It took us a year to find this property. Just the views, the horizon, the sunrise, the sunset. It was just our own little piece of happiness. In 2025, Stargate started to break ground on the property. And all of a sudden, life changed. We had no idea what they were building there. And then we heard that the reason we couldn't find out what they were building there was because people were asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And when they get there, there's just dust flying everywhere. We started taking a poll to see how often we have to change our filters, and it's every 2 weeks because they're completely filthy and full.
All right, so this is what it looks like in a standard drone shot, but watch what happens when I switch to thermal.
Wow.
It's important to note that it's not showing us the specific pollutants or specific gases that are emitted by these turbines, but just by showing us that heat signature, we know that pollution is happening at this site.
So that's an important differentiation, because part of the problem on the public human health vertical is that it depends on like, and this is some research that I've done, like trying to tie like public health impacts, clean energy job creation, and data centers just together. It depends on like what the generator is, right? So like if you have a diesel generator that's like they have different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I believe that refers to like the mix that you're using for like the fuel. But if you're using like a diesel generator, right, versus a natural gas turbine, those would emit different types of pollutants, but you would still have some common ones, I would imagine, like at the end of the day. So it's important to note that like there are, like when you use a diesel generator, what you probably emit volatile organic compounds, VOCs, along with a couple of other ones that are probably not so good for lung tissue, right? So it's interesting where we see the level of pollution that's being emitted, but we don't know what type, because like that is going to determine just how hazardous the human health impact would be. And I don't even, well, we'll find out whether or not this is a diesel generator or natural gas turbine.
Gas turbines like these are essentially jet engines that generate electricity, and they emit a lot of greenhouse gases and harmful air pollution, which is linked to asthma, heart attacks, and even premature death. The day we filmed, Stargate was only operating one of the 10 turbines that it has on site, but it eventually plans to have more than 50 of these turbines powering its operations here, something OG was unaware of until we informed her.
I didn't know about their expansion plan and what that looks like for our home. If we're already dealing with the noise difficulty with only 10 turbines that they have right now, I can only imagine how much more difficult it's going to be like.
So we have noise, we have air pollution, and then we have so noise, air pollution, and then maybe some visual. Noise, air pollution, and then some visual effects from like the dust or something like that. Those are 3 impacts like so far. It's interesting.
I feel trapped. We invest in our home, we serve our country, and we weren't even included in this process. We weren't given any time to understand what this impact was going to be on us. The long-term ramifications, we weren't given time to try to leave. So how do I feel? Upset.
Okay. I'm empathetic, but the thing is that like also at the same time, this is going to happen, I think, no matter what. Like if a data center company is going to enter any sort of land, there's always going to be like 1 or 2 people that will feel this way. So the question is like, is there some sort of like relocation compromise that like they can reach, or is there a way to fund relocation efforts if they proceed anyway? It's unfortunate. Both of them serve their country, and then all of a sudden they feel extremely trapped by what's going on. But the thing is that like this is happening like all across the country, and there's no clear answer as to like how you figure this out.
It's absolutely shocking to see that invisible pollution made visible like this. This is incredible. So how can you tell if a facility like this is following the law?
Well, we're going to take these images to a series of experts to really make sure that we understand what we're looking at, but you'd be surprised what I've found in the past.
Evan's investigation previously took him to Southaven, Mississippi, another community being impacted by a giant new hyperscale AI data center, xAI's Colossus, which helps power their chatbot, Grok.
In this drive for speed, this race for AI dominance, Elon Musk and xAI parked these massive turbines on tractor trailers to power their operations.
Hold up. I thought Colossus 2 was in Memphis, Tennessee. Let me search this up real quick. Colossus 2 is xAI's massive AI supercomputer and data center facility located in Memphis, Tennessee. What?
Musk and xAI parked these massive turbines.
Grok.
Wait, what was that? That said Southaven, Mississippi? What? But are there multiple Colossus 2s? Hold up. Colossus 2, South Haven, Mississippi. Can't even spell. At its second data center facility in South Haven, Mississippi. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Perhaps there's multiple Colossus 2 data centers. I was just confused because like I always kind of cite like, oh, Colossus 1 and 2 is in Memphis, Tennessee, but I was unaware that like there was another one in South Haven, Mississippi. I'll have to search that up. Sorry, let's continue. Oh, shit. Dang it.
Power their chatbot, Grok.
In this drive for speed, this race for AI dominance, Elon Musk and xAI parked these massive turbines on tractor trailers to power their operations. They then argued that these were temporary power sources and therefore did not require state or federal permits to operate. That is really out of step with long-standing EPA policy that turbines like these, which are major pollution sources, require permits regardless of whether or not they're considered temporary or not.
We genuinely just don't understand how they're still allowed to run their turbines right now.
Okay, same thing in Memphis, Tennessee. That's why you have the federal lawsuit from the NAACP, Earth Justice, and a couple of environmental organizations as well. Like the confusion over like how did they obtain these permits? Did they bribe people? Things like that.
There's people in the very neighborhood that we're standing next to right now that probably still have no idea just because it's been kept so quiet.
Even people that are living really, really close to it never really got a good sense of what was there in their backyard.
I did not discover that the power plant was going to be built until it was actually here. There wasn't a public meeting or anything like that. It was just kind of here all of a sudden, which was a big shock and a big surprise.
I was really fortunate to speak with a resident who has a home directly across the street from the South Haven gas plant, a woman named Crystal Polk, and she agreed to let me fly the drone from her property. As soon as the drone rose above the tree line, I could see that a number of these turbines were emitting very, very strong heat signatures, at least a dozen. And it seemed to me very obviously that these turbines were operating.
Having turbines running so close to my home that are unpermitted is a very deep concern. I am severe asthmatic as well as some of my children. I am very concerned about what is going to be in the air and how it's going to affect my health. We were going to retire here, but now we have emptied the house of all furniture because of the pollution. I think I shed a few tears because it's been my forever. It's where I grew up.
The bring your own power plant strategy seen at Colossus was once an outlier in the industry. But this strategy has gone mainstream, and nowhere is that more apparent than in Texas. There are roughly 300 data centers here in Texas, with at least 100 currently under construction, with an additional 100 more planned. And the vast majority are powered by fossil fuels. Texas has around 80 gigawatts of natural gas power under construction. And roughly half of those plants will provide power exclusively to data centers, without even connecting to Texas's electrical grid. Some of these approved sites are massive. One approved site in West Texas is slated to generate nearly 8 gigawatts alone, making it the largest proposed data center in the country. That 8 gigawatts is roughly enough to provide electricity for more than half the homes in the state. But that power will be off the grid, solely for one data center. While this so-called behind-the-meter strategy can reduce strain on the grid and might keep electricity prices down for consumers, it also means more power plants emitting more harmful pollutants across the state. The companies building these data centers almost always promise that they'll use renewables or nuclear when they announce their projects. But when you look at the data...
Yeah, but okay, so data center companies sign a lot of power purchase agreements. That's what they're referring to, I think. And that basically means like, okay, in exchange for paying this amount of money, we are going to buy, I don't know, let's say like 20 gigawatts of power that like get produced by solar and wind from a different part of like the US or a different part of the state. And then that power will be transferred over and theoretically like that'll run the data center, right? So data center companies are a very big purchaser of PPAs, and typically like in the news you'll see that like, oh, data center company X signed PPA Y, powering their data center facility with solar and with wind. On the nuclear thing, the problem with nuclear like right now is that the supply chain is currently like being upgraded. So nuclear is not going to pay off in the short term because there's a lot of work that has to be done with training the workforce, building out the sites, getting the supply chain up to par. So that's not going to pay off for at least like a couple of years. And the existing nuclear like power plants that we do have, I mean, yeah, they could work theoretically in maybe a small capacity, but that's being used to like power homes and infrastructure. So when they say like we're going to use nuclear, yeah, but that's not going to that's going to be like 5 to 10 years from now, maybe. I've seen varying estimates.
Most of what's actually being built right now is powered entirely by natural gas.
Yeah, because they don't have any other alternative. Even Texas, which has an abundant solar supply, still has to use and build out natural gas infrastructure to power these data centers in the short term. Again, speed to power, the time it takes to build a data center and bring it online.
It will be at least 2028 before renewables power AI at any real scale, and new nuclear plants are a decade or more away.
There we go.
These fossil
Oh my
fuel-powered
God.
facilities generate fine particulate matter, widely understood to be detrimental to human health. One study estimated the healthcare-related costs for people living near a similar Virginia power plant could be up to $100 million a year. And that's not the only risk. Researchers have shown that data centers create their own heat islands, raising temperatures nearby by as much as 2 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so I know what this paper is. It was on my LinkedIn profile like a long time ago, a couple of months ago, and the studies are quite concerning, or the study is quite concerning because the thing is that I don't think people understand just how bad potentially this could get. We have a super El Nino coming now, as of it's June 12th right now. And we're in a super El Nino, I think, for like at least a year. So that means warmer temperatures all year round. And right now, a lot of, states are already prone to droughts. A lot of, the continental U.S. is in drought conditions, unfortunately. So the urban heat island effect from cities is something that we cover in like a lot of environmental classes where during the day, concrete absorbs a ton of heat, right? And so like if you live in a city, your temperature profile automatically will be a couple of degrees like higher than compared to, for example, let's say a forest, because the concrete absorbs the heat during the day and even retains it at night when it like releases it when there's no sunlight or whatever to like cool down. So you still have like higher than average like temperatures throughout the day, just because of concrete absorbing all that heat. I'm doing a very simplistic job of explaining it, I know. But talk to an urban city planning person, okay? I'm just trying to share what I have learned. And so the point with this is that if data centers, especially hyperscale ones, which are, full of concrete and are next to cities or towns or whatever, if they are built and then they raise the temperature increase by I've been seeing some estimates, like it might range. So like, let's say 2 to 3 degrees, right? So you have the data center heat island effect, you have drought conditions, and then you have the super El Nino, which makes everything like warmer. Like, my God, I don't even know what that's going to do to like the temperature profile of like cities or towns.
Through their heavy use of industrial equipment and energy consumption. AI chips and models are becoming more efficient when it comes to power and heat, but those efficiency gains are being exceeded by overall growth in AI usage.
So that term is called Jevons paradox. When as AI models become energy efficient, consume less energy over time, the number of consumers of said service basically outpace any energy efficiency gains that occur. That's called Jevons paradox.
Part as a result of that efficiency gain. This is a well-known phenomenon in technology innovation called the Jevons paradox.
There we go.
It was first described in the 1860s. The English were concerned about running out of coal, their main source of power. Some argued that as coal-burning plants became more efficient, less coal would be used. But economist William Stanley Jevons showed that increasing efficiency wouldn't save coal, because cheaper, more efficient power would lead to an overall rise in demand for coal. Hyperscalers like Stargate may be getting more efficient, but if the Jevons paradox holds up, those gains will be erased by the increased demand for AI. Electricity isn't the only concern. The tens of thousands of high-powered chips inside a data center like this.
Let me guess, e-waste. That's another topic that we don't really hear about a lot of. So when you overclock, your chip that's in your computer, which is not the same thing as like what's in a data center, of course, but I'm kind of making an analogy, that's going to, push it to its limit. And so like you can think of data centers almost as like a depreciating asset over time. You know how everyone's saying like buy gold, buy silver as like a hedge against like, economic uncertainty, and the Federal Reserve might cut or raise interest rates. E-waste from data centers is a legitimate concern that might go up over time, because like a data center is like kind of a depreciating asset. You're going to have to rotate server racks, stuff breaks down, right? And then you also have to upgrade pre-existing data centers that were built a couple of years ago to any current specs right now. So it's going to generate a ton of e-waste. I'm curious about estimates to see like what we could do and what programs can be spun off from this. Like maybe, if you overuse a bunch of server racks and it's still in good condition, maybe you donate them to universities that are always in need of compute.
Generate enormous amounts of heat, requiring massive cooling systems to prevent failures.
Oh, never mind.
Stargate uses a closed-loop cooling system that's...
My bad. It was talking about water and cooling. But the e-waste stuff is a legitimate concern. Don't let anyone else tell you different.
Circulates water to pull heat away from the machines. While these systems usually only need to be filled once, they do require more electricity to run. By some estimates, the rise in data centers in the state of Texas could increase water usage a whopping 9% by the year 2030. We took the footage we'd gathered to OG to show her what was taking place just next door to her home.
From my experience, I can tell that this plume right here, this is a very large heat signature.
That's just one.
That's just one.
It's crazy to see it from this perspective. It just shows how close.
That means that they're running it full tilt, essentially. You can't really get a sense of it without the thermal, I mean, this is what it looks like to you, and I know that's alarming in and of itself, but once you see the thermal, it is really a completely different matter.
Yeah, it looks off. It just looks like a structure.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that thing is just cooking.
Yeah, and then there's a plan for 51 of these in total at this site.
They wouldn't put these here unless they plan to use them.
That's the idea. I mean, there is literally a shortage of these turbines nationwide. Companies are scrambling to stockpile.
Oh, that's another big thing that you won't hear about is supply chain issues for natural gas turbines. The sheer amount of demand for these turbines have exceeded like available supply, and like companies are, I think, GE Vernova is one company that builds natural gas turbines, and they are like literally scrambling to accelerate production as like much as possible.
Them make orders years in advance now to try to get as many of these as possible. You don't get these kinds of turbines unless you plan on turning them on. This is what it looks like in her front yard. And to hear her tell it, she had no idea that this was coming until it was essentially there.
That's almost unconscionable,
Catherine Guerra spent years at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and is now at Public Citizen, a consumer rights advocacy group. So
I applied for several roles with Public Citizen a long time ago. Yeah, wow.
She's uniquely qualified to help us make sense of what we saw in Abilene and to figure out if Stargate is operating under the appropriate rules.
These initial permits came in at a lower level authorization called a permit by rule. With permit by rules, they are activity specific. So, for example, an auto body shop would get a permit by rule authorization, or a dry cleaner would get a permit by rule authorization. When a data center pursues these lower level pre-construction authorizations that grants them the authority to begin operating with no public notice requirement and no public input or participation, that feels pretty intentional.
So that kind of approval process happening so quickly seems possibly appropriate if we're talking about an auto body shop or a laundromat. Does it make sense for a large-scale power plant that could theoretically power hundreds of thousands of homes?
Not to me, it doesn't.
As it seeks to expand, Stargate developers have since applied for other permits that seem to better suit the sprawling data center. Critics say this small first, big later strategy enables data centers to get a foothold in a community without public input, and to make it harder or even impossible to stop them once construction has already begun. But even with the correct permits, Catherine seriously doubts that the Texas environmental regulatory bodies have the capacity to hold polluters accountable.
The data center industry is expanding at a rate that is beyond the capability of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to sufficiently regulate. We have seen enforcement cases this past year that were 10 years old.
So it seems like what we saw at Stargate is allowable operations under the permits that they currently have. Does that make it okay still, in your opinion?
These air pollutants, they don't go up into the atmosphere and go away. We know that these facilities are emitting volatile organic compounds, NOx, and particulate matter, and the health impacts.
Bingo. So those are the other ones that I was trying to come up with on the spot, and I miserably failed. Nitrogen oxide dioxide, PM 2.5, and volatile organic compounds. Yeah. Again, I mean, it'll depend, I think, on like whether or not you're running a diesel generator compared to like, let's say, like a natural gas turbine. But in the end, you still have like pollutants that are being emitted. And here's the thing, like air pollution doesn't know borders, right? So your emission source could be, you know, Stargate Abilene project, and then could travel hundreds of miles if it's a windy day potentially, and maybe impact communities like, I don't know, in a particular like area for up to like at least, you know, 10 to 100 miles, depending on like windy conditions. It's a possibility. And then you have asthma rates going through the roof, maybe respiratory, cardiovascular, you know, it is a legitimate concern, a public health impact.
Are respiratory, cardiovascular, people with asthma or children and elderly people in these communities. Those are the folks that are going to be suffering from this air pollution and massive amounts of air pollution.
Stargate was still under construction when we visited, so most of the turbines were sitting idle. But one day soon, this site could host a city's worth of polluting exhaust stacks. At this point, this campus may be adhering to the permits that they've been issued. But there are huge questions as to whether those permits are appropriate for a facility like this, and whether private energy grids like this are sufficiently regulated for safety and pollution. There's so much that is unseen in these operations.
Why are journalists like you doing this observation instead of regulators?
Well, right now, what we're seeing at the administration is a lot of pro-AI policies coinciding with the gutting of various environmental agencies and enforcement agencies.
Bingo. Relates to the upcoming midterms as well, right?
So it's really unsure if we weren't doing this kind of work, if anybody else would be.
Some of these companies have made promises that these very same AI technologies could help us solve climate change. What is your take on that?
You hear that a lot from folks like Sam Altman himself, who said that, AI can fix climate change and can cure diseases and all these things. And while there may be enormous potential for that kind of thing, the experts that I've been talking to say that that just isn't happening at scale right now.
Look, AI will not help us solve, AI is not going to solve climate change, okay? This is my belief, and this is something that I've constantly been asked about as well. My take is that AI is not going to help us solve climate change. It is not a silver bullet, right? It's going to help us in different narrow AI applications, like for example, science, drug discovery, better weather forecasting, and stuff like that. But the way that you solve climate change is not through a technology. It's through advocacy. It's through public policy. It's through getting the public involved. It's a combination of different things to solve something as like existential and as like global spanning, like as climate change. Like this is part of the reason like why with this current administration a lot of the climate cuts are setting like progress, at least for the US, like back at least by like a couple of years, maybe to a decade. You know, it's extremely it's extremely concerning to me and like a lot of my colleagues like in the space, like the amount of damage that has been caused by that. But AI is not going to solve climate change. It's going to help solve different verticals like weather forecasting and, for example, optimizing energy systems for the grid, but it's not going to completely solve climate change. It's the constant, like in school, I remember, the like what was it, the different types of futures that you could have, right? You have the technological system of belief where it's like, oh, technology will save us. Then you have like the middle where it's like it's a combination of different things. It's public policy, it's citizen advocacy, it's like all these different things. Technology can be a part of that solution, but it's not the only thing. Like it's not the thing that's going to solve climate change. Like I don't care if like AGI is going to be a thing. AGI being this super advanced system that can do anything. It's not going to solve climate change. It's going to be a combination of different actions that we take as a society, public policy measures that we pass at the federal level, state level, and local level to curb emissions, to electrify the grid, to put more sustainability initiatives out there. But that's just my personal belief, and AI can be a part of that solution, but it is not the solution that will help us solve climate change. But that's my take. So anyway, I think this video is as long as it's going to be, and we're at the end anyway. Like, share, and subscribe. This was a very interesting video by PBS Terra and Floodlight News. It's definitely something that I'm going to keep track of in the future with different, hyperscale AI data center campuses like Stargate. So again, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.